Welcome to the Space City X-Files.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Space City X-Files, the podcast that covers some of the world's greatest mysteries and the events that have shaped our world and society today. I'm Rick, your host, and in this episode, we'll be taking a closer look at the tragic events that unfolded on the night of October 1st, 2017, in Las Vegas, Nevada. The deadliest mass shooting in modern American history. This tragedy claimed the lives of 58 people and injured hundreds more. But the story doesn't end there. In the years since the shooting, several conspiracy theories have emerged, challenging the official narrative and raising questions about what really happened that night at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. As we examine the details of the shooting and its aftermath, we'll also consider what they reveal about our society and our relationship with the truth. So join us as we delve into the story of the Las Vegas shooting, the conspiracy theories surrounding it, and the lessons we can learn from both of them. This is episode 24, the Las Vegas shooting. A few quick announcements. Space City X-Files appreciates you listening to today's episode. Whether you're a new friend or a long-time listener, one thing you'll notice is that we run no commercials or ads here. That allows us to give the best possible experience, and we'll do everything we can to keep it that way. This is where your support plays a huge role. After you listen to the episode, whatever platform you're on, please take a few minutes to leave us a review on what you thought. Your feedback helps us to grow by bringing awareness to the show, which in turn will bring in new listeners, and that's exactly what we need. If by any chance you would like to support the show with a monetary donation, you can go to our website and click on the Support Us tab. There you can type in any amount you want. All proceeds always go towards the improvement of the program. We thank you for your consideration, and that will conclude today's announcements. Alright friends, before we get started, I would just like to give a little disclaimer, forewarning, that this is a graphic episode about a true event that took place in Las Vegas. So I'm forewarning you, if you think that this topic may trigger some ill feelings, then you might want to skip this episode. Or if you just want to hear the theories part, that's less graphic. I can't say that it's not graphic because it's still going to have some in there. But if you want to skip ahead about 20 minutes or so, it should be a lot cleaner than the events that we're going to talk about now. Alright, so either way, don't worry if you missed this one. There's going to be another episode next week. But nothing's more important than your mental well-being. Alright? So with that being said, we'll now start the episode. So, how this episode will unfold is first, we'll give a brief summary of what happened the day of the shooting to familiarize ourselves. And then after that, we're going to dive into the details. And that will consist of who the shooter was, the facts and the controversy surrounding the event, and the efforts of the investigation by law enforcement. We'll then wrap it up with our own personal observation of this tragic shooting. Alright, so it's October 1st, 2017, and 64-year-old Stephen Paddock is in his hotel room on the 32nd floor in his adjoining comped rooms number 134 and 135 at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. Now, his rooms were purposefully chosen overlooking an event parking lot across the street from his hotel that happened to be hosting an event called the Route 91 Harvest country music festival. And that night happened to be the last night of the show. A few days before the evening of October 1st, Stephen had been taking measures to protect his surrounding area and room from police or hotel employees gaining easy access to it. So Stephen placed small cameras throughout the hallways, stair corridors, so he can keep an eye on who was coming and going. At some point, he also fashioned some L-shaped metal brackets and screwed them to the inside of the door frames on the stairwell and his room doors, so now they would also be blocked from opening to the inside. So it was clear that he was preparing to barricade the floor, and now the only other way into his hall would be the elevators, which could easily be disabled. Also, in the days leading up, Stephen would bring in an unbelievable number of suitcases full of guns on 5 different days, some which he had help from the hotel staff to lug them up to his room, which is suspect. On September 25th, he brought up 5 cases of guns. On the 26th, he brought up 7. On the 28th, 2 cases. On the 30th, another 6 cases, which also is the day he hung the Do Not Disturb sign. And then finally, the last 2 cases on the day of the shooting. Now, altogether, the dude had 24 guns up there, all without tipping off the staff, which is crazy. But in that arsenal, he had 14 AR-15 style rifles with scopes, bump stocks, and high-capacity rounds that could hold over 100 bullets each. If you're not familiar with the bump stock, it's the back part of the gun that tucks against your arm. It's made of a cushiony material that's made to bounce. So basically, when you shoot, the recoil sends the gun back. The stock will send the gun forward, causing the trigger to squeeze again against your finger. And this makes it possible to achieve a rapid fire scenario without having a fully automatic weapon. It's extremely lethal. Besides the AR-15s, he had a bunch of hunting rifles with scopes, like some 308s, which are very strong and accurate, some 223 bolt action rifles, and he had 1 snub 38 special. It's important to note that the ammo he had were tracer rounds. So with this type of ammo, usually every 3rd bullet glows red or green. There's a bunch of different colors, but those are the typical ones. And so when you're shooting at night and visibility is low, these rounds are a game changer, because if you don't necessarily have to be aiming through your sights on each shot, okay? Having a tracer round will help you to adjust fire in the direction you want to go, and you can get it there quickly and accurately because of the glowing rounds. Another eerie testament to Stephen Paddock's intentions. At approximately 10 p.m., security guard Jesus Campos and maintenance technician Stephen Shuck were responding to an open door alarm. And so they figured that it was just another faulty electronic. And, so they head up and check it out. Jesus goes to open the door leading to the level 32 hallway from the corridor, from the stairwell corridor. And then he realizes that something's blocking the door. So he struggles with it for a while and finally knocks it open. After forcing it open, he sees the makeshift L brackets, and then he proceeds up the hallway towards the direction of something that he described as loud drilling. Now, he's heading in the direction of Stephen Paddock's room, and as he nears the room at 10:05, he's struck through the right thigh by one of about 35 bullets that Stephen lets fly through the front door of his room. Now, Jesus Campos scrambles back to around the corner to an adjacent alcove next to the exit and takes cover. As he looks up, he sees the maintenance tech approaching and immediately yells for him to get down and call it in on the radio that they have an active shooter on the floor. Alright, so at this point, Stephen Paddock breaks out the windows and bowl suites facing the festival. And at 10:06 p.m., he starts firing down on the people. Now, this is the official narrative of what I'm telling you right now. Stephen would fire over 1,000 rounds, stopping to reload every so often, and possibly switching between rifles. Now, during a break, I'm guessing to reload, most of the people were able to make their way away from the range of fire, and so I don't think he's being able to reach them anymore. So he sees this, and then he shifts his attention to a large jet fuel tank in the adjacent McCarran International Airport. So now he's trying to blow up the airport. Alright, so Paddock would fire 8 total bullets, striking the tank twice, but it did not explode. Now here's where it gets kind of strange. By 10:18, there was no more gunfire. It stopped all of a sudden. No one knows why. The police arrived and evacuated the floor. At 11:20, police breached Paddock's second room, number 135, with explosives, and claimed that they found him dead with a single self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Then, a few minutes later, police breached Paddock's other room, number 134, and a single 3-round burst is heard from a semi-automatic weapon. Now, one of the officers later states that it was his weapon that accidentally discharged a 3-round burst, but that no one was in the room. And here's where it gets a little stranger. However, they don't give the all clear officially until 11:27, 7 minutes after they discover Paddock's lifeless body. It's kind of odd. So this is where some of the controversy lies, but we'll get into that in a bit. By the time the tragic event was over, 60 people had lost their life, 58 that night, and then 2 succumbed to their injuries later. The number of wounded patrons was shocking, with over 800 wounded needing life-saving treatment there in the parking lot, while the firing overhead continued at times. There were some individuals that night who went above and beyond to help their fellow man and woman. Many received awards for their heroism. As it stands, the Las Vegas attack is the deadliest mass shooting in American history. These are the events that transpired October 1st, 2017, to the best of our knowledge, based off of information provided by the Las Vegas Police Department. Alright. So, now let's move into the facts and theories surrounding the incident. And we'll start looking at Stephen Paddock first. Alright. For one, who was this guy, and what motive could he have possibly had to want to cause such carnage? Now, information is limited, but from what we do know, Stephen Paddock was born on April 9th, 1953 in Clinton, Iowa, but he grew up in Tucson, Arizona. He was the oldest of 4 children and attended school in the Tucson area, where he would eventually graduate and then attend California State University, Northridge, gaining a degree in business administration. Now, I want you to keep that college name in the back of your mind, okay? California State University, Northridge. All right, hold on to that. Now, I couldn't find much on his childhood, but what we could was pretty interesting. All right, so Stephen's dad happened to be a notorious bank robber back in the day. His dad, Benjamin Paddock, or as his accomplices called him, Old Baldy or Chrome Dome, started getting in trouble early in his life, first going to prison for auto theft in 1946. Now, he would stay on the wayward path until he graduated to the big times in the 60s as he started knocking over banks. And this is finally what got him sent to the big house for 20 years. Stephen would have been around 12 or so. But Benjamin Paddock, Stephen's dad, would escape from prison and go on the run until he was finally apprehended in 1978. And so you can probably say, well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yeah, you could probably say that if Stephen had been raised by his dad, but as we see here, the guy was never around. And so it make it kind of difficult to say that. So it's probably safe to say that Stephen didn't have much of a father figure in his life. But that didn't stop him from doing well for himself. All right, because Stephen would become an accountant and then a real estate investor where he would make some serious money there. And it was this money that allowed him to live a rather wealthy lifestyle. As we mentioned in the preset, he was a high-stakes gambler. I mean, he owned a few different properties, luxury condos. He gambled so much at Mandalay Bay that the hotel rooms where he shot from were actually comped, meaning that he paid nothing for them. So they don't do that for anybody. And he had 2 rooms, so so it was later found reported that he spent, sometimes $1 million, over $1 million a year gambling at these places. All right, so with all that being said, now that we know that information, what would be the reason a dude with all that money, who was having fun, who was living the dream, have to go on a shooting rampage for? What's the meaning of that? And that's the thing. Nobody can really say why Stephen would do such a thing. I mean, typically when someone does something like this, they leave behind a manifesto or something stating their cause or their reason or their terrorist group calling card. But nothing like that could be found here in this case. I mean, even if he just snapped and the first thing that came to his head was mass murder, there's usually some telltale sign that would point to him doing something like that. But Stephen didn't have a criminal record. He wasn't linked to any extremist groups or on social media. He didn't post on, he wasn't involved in crazy groups. And for the people that knew Stephen, they said that his life was like rather uneventful and routine. He gambled, he spent money, he had a girlfriend, so he was always, they were just together, and they were drunks and they would gamble. That was their life. He would travel back and forth between Las Vegas and Arizona. Yeah, so like we were saying, he would bounce around. He had a condo in Mesquite, Nevada. And then he would go to Las Vegas and then his other homes, and he would gamble and drink. That's about it. And his brother Eric Paddock, he gave a few different interviews, and then each interview he was just stating the same thing over and over again, that he couldn't believe what happened. He couldn't believe Stephen would do such a thing. He describes Stephen as like your normal everyday dude. That's what he called him. No hate, no extreme views, no violent past. He was just like a drifter, So he did say that they didn't talk very often, but he still couldn't think of any reason for Stephen to do something like what he did. And then his brother Eric Paddock kind of insinuated in one of the interviews that this may have been a setup, because he just couldn't see any other reason why Stephen would do such a thing. Not my brother, is what he said. And when they asked him what he meant by that, he kind of immediately changed the subject. Then he just went inside his home. And that was the end of that. So now, as far as motives go, we're still left with the question, why, to this very day? All these years later. The anniversary just passed on the 1st. And nobody's still any clearer of why Stephen would do such a thing. So, as far as the formal investigation into the shooting, neither the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department nor the FBI could figure out anything. They unanimously determined that Paddock was not tied to any extremist groups, but they did say that Stephen's mental and physical health was on the decline, and they said that his finances over the last year were kind of dwindling too. So maybe he had a net worth of like $2 million instead of 3 or 4. And they said that this could have been the reason why he did what he did. I don't know, but the last part is debatable. It's definitely not concrete, because at the time of the shooting, his net worth was still well over a few $1,000,000. And not to mention this, that narrative kind of contradicted what the people close to Stephen said, because according to them, he was rich and he was living the dream, you know. Well, that's what we have on Stephen there. And I don't know. Let's keep digging and maybe we can find out some more clues. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some of the theories that were going around, that have been going around, circulating on the web, about what possible reason a 64-year-old millionaire could have had for taking lives that were innocent, that did absolutely nothing to him. Let's take a look at that now. One of the really interesting things that I found was that 1 year later from the day of the shooting, all right, this would have been November 7th, 2018, there would be another mass shooting at a place called the Borderline Bar in Thousand Oaks, California. Check this out. Here, 14 people would lose their life and 16 would be injured after one lone gunman named Ian David Long walked in and opened fire on a bunch of patrons with different types of guns for absolutely no reason at all. Now, eventually he would take his own life with a single shot under his chin. It's tragic. I can't even begin to describe what, or even try to make sense of it. But, you know, one thing that's even more stranger about this specific incident, and I don't know how these puzzle pieces fit together. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't. But check this out. Over 50 survivors who survived the Las Vegas shooting the year before were at the establishment that night that the Borderline Bar in Thousand Oaks, California was attacked. Can you believe that? One of them even lost their lives at the hands of Ian Long. And to go even further down the rabbit hole was that the bar was a country music establishment. And the gunman was a graduate of California State University, Northridge. The guy was a veteran. I mean, he was a veteran. I think it was a U.S. Army veteran. He graduated from the California State University, Northridge, the same place Stephen Paddock graduated from. Why do such a thing? What was going on here? Was this all just a big coincidence? I don't know. Many came to the conclusion right away that it was far more than just a coincidence. In fact, there's many theories that started to spring up after this happened, that this area was being targeted in some way. Some said that Paddock and Long were programmed and triggered to commit these crimes, so that stricter gun laws could be placed or installed in the respected areas. And that's always a hot topic. You know, you hear in the news all the time in politics, people calling for bans on assault rifles. They want this gun ban. They want that gun ban. They want age limit raised. There's all kinds of things going on. And then, that's on one side. Then you have the other side claiming that guns are just the surface of the issue. It's just a surface issue. You're not looking at the big picture. They claim that you take the guns away. Take the guns away. Someone that wants to hurt somebody, they're going to pick up the next best thing. You know? If it ain't a gun, it's a knife. It's not a knife, it's a bat. If it's not a bat, then they'll forge something out of, they'll go back to spears if they have to. Other rumors swirled that someone who was at the Las Vegas shooting and the Thousand Oaks shooting was a target, and whoever was after them was just going after them, and they were going to get them one way or another, whether it was in Las Vegas or whether it was in California or whether it was in New York. Doesn't matter. Whoever this person was that was being targeted, they were going to get theirs in the end. And that was another theory that was swirling around. But whatever the truth is, it still remains unknown. And in both cases, the ones that are left behind are left with the heartache and many unanswered questions. And the biggest one is why? Unlike Stephen Paddock, Ian David Long did leave behind one last eerie social media post before taking his own life. He wrote, "It's too bad I won't get to see all the illogical and pathetic reasons people will put in my mouth as to why I did what I did. Fact is, I had no reason to do it. I just thought, fuck it. Life is boring, so why not?" End quote there, though it may never be clear. Perhaps this was Paddock's reason too. Maybe these events were just the, the one last thrashing of people that are just outside of their minds and have zero regard for their own life, not much anybody else's. Many other theories ran rampant following the Las Vegas shooting, from unverified claims that Paddock was linked to the Antifa group, to people even claiming that the whole thing was a ruse put on by a shadow group comprised of crisis actors to gain sway of the popular opinion on guns in America. Why would somebody want to take... Why is the battle on guns so huge? I mean, I understand there's two views to every issue, right? One saying people are killing people with guns, they don't need them, we need to take them away. But there's the argument on the other side that said if you take the guns away, you're disarming us. You're leaving us defenseless. Defenseless against somebody who may be orchestrating these events to speed along their goals, their initiatives. The goal of leaving Americans defenseless against governments, against foreign threats, against bad guys who are going to find a way to get the guns anyways. You know? Somebody who has ill intent, you really think they give a shit about their waiting period or being able to buy a gun from a store legally? Not the least bit. Anyways, moving forward. So, here's another wild theory. It turns out that after the shooting and after some things started becoming clear, who Stephen was started becoming a little bit clearer. the waters got a little bit muddied again, because it turns out that the terror cell ISIS actually made a statement and claimed that Paddock was their quote-unquote soldier who was carrying out the call they made for people to become rogue agents and attack random places in America. Now, the U.S. government claims that they did their due diligence into the accusations but could not find any substantial evidence linking Paddock to the terror cell, which is odd because in 2010, Paddock applied for a visa and started traveling frequently to the Middle East and the Philippines. I'm talking about regularly traveling there. Places that are known to be a breeding ground for terrorists. So I hope they did do their due diligence, because to me, it most certainly could have been an opportunity for him to make connections to people who were anti-American, especially if he was already growing in his own disdain for his own country. I mean, that would have been easy pickings. You know, they see a rich white guy who's got access to, these high-priced scenes, these fancy hotels. There's this big music festival going on. Why not? You know, it was the perfect storm. But it's unverified. We don't know. Paddock's dead, and nobody seems to be talking much more about it. So for now, that aspect of it is just going to remain a mystery. And perhaps we'll get some breaking information soon. One of the reasons for covering this topic again is not to glorify the events that happen or to try to bring up harmful memories, but it's to bring up it's to bring awareness that these things do happen, that this is real. You know, whether it's a mental health issue or whether it was an extremist view issue, or whether it's a gun issue or whether it's a shadow organization issue. I don't know, but the fact is that people, we can't forget about these things. You know, in America, the media floods you with story after story after story. So many stories that how are you going to keep up with what's what? Until eventually you just start trusting the news agencies. Well, you know, I'm just going to have to trust them that they're showing me what I need to see. No, absolutely not. When there's big news that comes out and the news stations aren't talking about them, that's usually the telltale sign that they're important. Or they try to get them out of the spotlight really, really quick, you know. Those are the times where you should start paying attention. All right, because whoever controls the media controls a whole hell of a lot. All right, so moving on. The biggest of all theories, though, in my opinion, was the claim that Paddock was possibly a patsy or a fall guy to a deal gone bad. Now, for one, with all the surveillance cameras around the Mandalay Bay Hotel, in the hallways and the stairwell corridors, they never released any video showing Paddock taking the measures to protect or to counter surveil his area. They never showed any video of him taking the shitload of suitcases up to his room, or even the hotel clerks helping him out. They never released any of that. And it turns out, too, that the hard drive from his computer, from his personal laptop, went missing for a while in evidence. And then all of a sudden it turns up. And when they finally when they look into it, there's child porn all over it. And Eric was like, no way, not Steven. Like, he hated that. That was another thing that he just could not, you could see it all over his face. Like, he didn't believe what happened. All right. And then you have the gunfire. If this guy was insane and his goal was to kill as many people as possible. Why did he stop shooting? I mean, he had an arsenal at his fingertips. He had unlimited ammo. It's like he just entered a cheat code, and he's got, all the guns and ammo that he can want. If he was out of his mind, why would he just stop shooting? I mean, even if the police were closing in on his door, why wouldn't he shoot through his door? He can see them. He shot Jesus Campos through the door. It seems too convenient. It seems too planned out, For me, it does. And so, according to witnesses and police statements, the front door of his room was breached with explosives. And then he was found dead, but no all clear sign was given. Then they breached the other door, and then there's this mysterious 3-round burst from an officer's rifle that goes off. Oops. All right, check this out. There's a scenario that goes like this. To me, this is the leading theory, the leading conspiracy theory that kind of goes against the official narrative. All right, so it goes like this: that the FBI were watching Paddock because he wasn't part of a terrorist cell. He wasn't nothing like that. He wasn't a known pedophile or nothing like that. They were watching him because he was selling guns. He was selling guns to people that don't want to be, I don't know, I guess, known that they were buying such guns. They don't want their names, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And he was selling them out of the hotel. Now, he had no reason to suspect anybody was watching him. I mean, this was small time. He thought, at least, small time deal. I sell a few guns, a few suitcases, so what? Nobody's gonna look at me. I'm not gonna harm nobody. I'm just selling guns. So he didn't have no reason to think that he was being watched. But the people that he was selling to were likely people that were on the FBI watch list, possibly agents, ISIS agents. And so as soon as they got wind that they were buying weapons from the FBI got wind they were buying weapons from Paddock, they started watching them. And so the goal was to bust these guys. And so during the deal, when the FBI was about to breach the room, they did so without the knowledge that Paddock had 2 rooms. All right, so they blow the door, they swarm in, they find nothing. But now in the other room, alerted, the terrorists think that they've been set up, so they kill Paddock. They hold the police at bay. They bust out the windows, and in one last act of terror, they begin to shoot out at the concertgoers. The police then breach the other room, and that's when you hear the officers firing the 3-round burst, killing the other man who was in the room with Paddock. All right. So to cover it all up, they take the evidence, including Paddock's body. They take his hard drive, take the surveillance video, all that stuff. It's all gone, and no one is the wiser. And check this out. The funny thing is that if you go to the Mandalay Bay Hotel now, you won't see a floor 32 because there is no more floor 32. Yeah, it seems like they did away with the whole entire floor. They sealed it off. Elevator don't stop, stairwell don't stop, nothing. And they did that so nobody would ever possibly, luckily, stumble across some kind of clue left behind that would reveal what really happened. Now, this theory, it's a little out there. It's a little out there. And you want to say it's almost too wild to be out there. There's no way. There's no way that can be true. But if you know what the government is capable of, if you've listened to the show for a while and heard some of the things that they've done, you kind of start to see that they have a track record, Those 3-letter agencies. You gotta watch them. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and transition to the final segment. What do I think happened in the case of the Las Vegas shooting? And I'm going to do this one a little bit better. I'm going to do this one a little bit different. All right. In this case, I'm not going to personally speculate about what happened. All right. To be honest, it doesn't even matter. All right. Until somebody comes up with something concrete, there's no point in saying that it could have been this or it could have been that. It doesn't matter. Whether it was an act of a man who lost his mind, or a shadow entity pulling the strings of another puppet, or some other corrupt scenario, for me it does no good to entertain it, because the damage has already been done. It don't bring the people back. It don't reunite the families. It won't make that hole go away. So many innocent lives lost that night, who were just out there trying to have a good time. So many families cheated at a time and memories made with their loved ones. Those are the ones that we dedicate this episode for. Those are the ones whose thoughts we keep in our prayers. And, we pray to God that they receive some kind of closure after all these years. And I hope that they find comfort in knowing that there's still people out there that are still fighting to figure out if anything corrupt was going on in the case of the incident that claimed the life of their family member. There's still people out there that are on your side. All right. It was 6 years, October 1st now, but I'm sure the sting is felt just like it was yesterday. My personal opinion, I don't believe disarming people is the answer in the context of politics. All right, I don't believe that disarming people is the answer, but mental health problems are real. The mental health issue that this country faces is real. All right, and that needs to be addressed. That has to become the greater priority in order for people to heal. And the overall distance between people in general has become far too great. And there was a time in this country when people looked at each other and they had compassion for their fellow man or woman, whether they were a stranger or not. They were there to help. And now it's everyone for themselves, and someone in need is not even an afterthought. If you don't believe me, go drive downtown in whatever city you're in and look at the homeless population. There's an issue in this country that Americans are being put last. And foreigners, foreign wars, proxy wars are being placed at the forefront. And that has to stop. We must find a way to fix this issue. Though I think that at this point, the world would need a huge shakeup in order for it to band back together. It reminds me of something Reagan said one day in a speech. He said, perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us all recognize this common bond that we have. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world? Something to ponder on. Something to ponder on. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, folks. It was a sad one. And if you made it to the end, I appreciate you listening. And I hope that you're able to take something away from it today. Because there's a lesson to be learned everywhere if we look hard enough. If we really glean the understanding of it, you know. If you have time after the show, please take a few minutes to write us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a like. Subscribe. All that good stuff. Be sure to share it with your friends. Because your feedback is what's bringing awareness to us. It's helping us to break through those algorithms and reach more people all over the world that are searching for the messages that we share. And you know, with your help, we'll be able to reach them. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. I hope you'll join us again next week for another thought-provoking episode. Until we meet again, this is Rick, the Space City X-Files, telling you to keep questioning, keep listening, and keep exploring.
Thank you for listening to Space City X-Files.